You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
Welcome into another 3-Ma. I am John Kurtz, joined as I am each and every week by Derek Young from K-State Online, Cole Manbeck, former beat writer for the Manhattan Mercury, and it is Sunflower Showdown preview time, folks. It has been a stressful week for your boy. You can ask these guys about the stupid texts that I've been sending them all week, between freaking out about coaching rumors, between freaking out about K-State's secondary, between freaking out about the Kansas game in general. Maybe we can even sprinkle in a little bit of like, what's going on with the Sugar Bowl situation here? I mean, there's just too much going on, guys. There's too much going on. We're going to unpack it all here on the show, which, of course, is brought to you by our friends at Holiday Distillery. 360 Vodka, Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon. Make sure that you stock up on those for your tailgate this weekend. But you can also make sure that you bring those by the tailgate that we are going to be having. You can come say hi to us before the KU game from 4 to 6. West side, number 778. All right, parking spot number 778. That is where the Holiday Distillery / 3-Ma tailgate will be going down this weekend. So come chat, have a drink with KCSN and Holiday Distillery. Maybe even some special guests, because earlier on Twitter today, I saw Reggie Stubblefield, good old sauce boss, said that he might be back in Manhattan. I threw him an invite. He seemed pretty open to it. So I don't know, guys. Maybe the sauce boss stopping by the tailgate. DY, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I see you a lot. I'd prefer the sauce boss. If you're not going to be able to go, I feel like that's a pretty adequate substitution there.
Hey, I don't – I won't criticize you for preferring him over me. I still remember it might have been the TCU game. It was a road game this year where he just showed up on the field with his old uniform.
That's right. I think it was TCU. Yeah.
DY, I was at the game in Fort Worth, obviously, and I had a panic attack that Josh Hayes had taken off his pads in the locker room because number one was walking around on the sideline during warmups because we saw Josh Hayes go to the locker room earlier. And so I just kept looking, and then I'm like, oh, that's Reggie Stubblefield. That's awesome. Look for us on the west side. You'll see the big KCSN tent, I believe, Holiday Distillery, Kansas City Sports Network tent. You'll see us. And if you want to meet DY, you'll probably need to get there as early as possible because I assume he'll be heading into the stadium pretty quickly after that 4 o'clock slot. So I'd say you get there by 4:20 if you want to meet the celebrity, Derek Young.
You guys think I could get Brando to come by?
No.
I think we could try. I wanted to have him on the pod, but I did not see a lot of vocal feedback about having that done. It didn't seem like people really thought it would be that funny. I think they thought I was genuinely like, let's have him on and asking him, inquisitive questions. I was going to have him on so we could bully him. But hey, Tim, really respect you. Could you come on the 3-Ma pod? Then get him on.
You should have given him the same pitch that you gave Brock Heward. I think you guys are the best tandem going in college football right now. We just want to talk about your wonderful career and how you wear stupid, ginormous bibs when you're eating in press boxes. We want to talk about all that, buddy.
I would prefer it also if it was a one-on-one between Cole and Tim Brando, just like it was between he and Brock Heward.
Yes. No, honestly, the better one would be me, because I'm not going to lie. Like, I don't think I could hold back. I really don't think I could hold back.
I'll be honest. I just wouldn't want to talk with him. It might be a little quiet if it was me and him, just like staring at each other.
So it would be like the same response I get when I pitch to you about pop culture things.
Probably. If I'm uninterested in your conversation, I'm usually just silent.
Well, we just saw that off air when Jed, our producer, was asking DY's favorite Christmas movies, and DY just didn't talk. So
Jed learns the valuable lesson that I learned when I tossed to Derek about Britney Spears once upon a time on live radio. Yes, that is exactly what happened there. All right, man, this is good. Off the rails already. Come see us at the tailgate, 4 to 6, 778. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep, 778. Have a drink with us too. Come by. We'll serve something up. Yeah.
Okay. Headline number 1. Let's just get this out of the way. There's been speculation. If you're reading Nebraska message boards, I guess if you're reading Nebraska Twitter, though I haven't seen it quite as much there, some of the smoke kicked up a little bit more this week about Chris Kleiman. Now, I think this mainly comes from the fact that Nebraska very much would like Chris Kleiman to go there. And I don't think that it is so much reciprocal. Even though this whole time I Do I really think Chris Kleiman is going to do that? No, I do not. But when it comes up and Nebraska fans, as delusional as they are, chasing every single rumor every week, there's a new guy. It seems like Kleiman was kind of the flavor of the not even really week, because now as we sit here on Tuesday night recording this, feels like maybe that's turned even a little bit now, but there was like a hot 24 to 48 hours with Chris Kleiman being the name to Nebraska there. He did not get asked about it at the press conference today. Where do things stand, Mr. Derek Young? I'm here to make fun of Nebraska fans. You're here to use your Big J Journo skills. So I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, I think it's more message board culture than anything. And I also think Trev Alberts is kind of running, to his credit, a pretty tucked in search. And I think Nebraska media members are also getting a little desperate for information and probably trying to draw some conclusions that they normally wouldn't, just based on very flimsy information, just because they need the content and they're not necessarily getting it from the internal Nebraska communications centers that they typically would. So I think part of it is that. And then just in general, I believe that, Chris Kleiman, I think he's made it very clear internally to the people that matter to him that he's not going anywhere. And I think Nebraska probably knows that at this point too. I don't fault them for trying. I just don't think it's going to be successful. And, those close to Chris Kleiman don't, there's just no indications or signs that he is showing any reason or, clues that he's going to go somewhere other than Manhattan, Kansas. I still feel that this is going to be his last job, and nothing has really changed my mind on that front. And I know, Kurtz, you can probably, reinforce this too. Even the real flimsy stuff that we heard that might tie the two together was associated with something that's completely unfounded as well. So one that I heard was like he's upset because he had to fire offense coordinator Courtney Messingham. Well, there is no vitriol between Chris Kleiman and Gene Taylor. That's really the big thing that keeps Chris Kleiman at Kansas State, and to suggest that there's vitriol between the two. I mean, they went to the Masters together in April. I mean, that's pretty far removed from the Courtney Messingham thing. So there is no bad blood there. There never was bad blood there either.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I've always said, DY? Nothing comes between a man who breaks a pimento sandwich with another man. You cannot break that bond. So I think that's pretty much set in stone there. Yeah, I mean, the other part of that is like, when you told me that, I was like, okay, let me get this straight. So the offensive coordinator that forced to get rid of, whatever you want to throw out there, how much better is this season going? It seems to have been a pretty beneficial thing for Chris Kleiman to have done that. And Courtney Messingham is still in Manhattan, right? So, I mean, it's not like he had to exile. It was all pretty ridiculous.
He's technically in Illinois now as an analyst. Okay. He's in Champaign.
Is it really? Did I know that? Did that happen?
I thought only Sean Snyder was in Champaign. I didn't know if
Sean Snyder replaced the coach that had cancer, so he's a full-time coach on an interim basis. Courtney Messingham is an analyst under Brett Bielema in Illinois. Good season on that side of the ball for Illinois, quite frankly. So good for them. And on the side note, I don't think Chris Kleiman had to be forced to make that decision.
No,
I think it was a tough one to make on a personal level, but I think he made it himself.
Yeah, I'm sure he's bitter about having the leading offense in Big 12 play in points per drive. That's helping getting him to the Big 12 championship.
What are we doing?
Pissed off about that. So, yeah. John, DY, did you guys hate Trev Alberts as much as I did when he was at ESPN? I couldn't stand the guy.
Your funny story about this, I'm sure you guys will remember. He was on ESPN with Mark May. They were the tandem that worked in the ESPN studio together at the time that Ohio State won the national championship in 2002. And I'm just a little 13, 14-year-old kid. And Trev Alberts and Mark May scorched Ohio State that entire season and said they didn't belong in the national championship game, and that Ohio State, thumbed their nose in it and won the national championship. So I always hated Trev Alberts because of that. I don't know if you guys remember that. They hated Ohio State.
I mean, I always thought Trev Alberts was a huge asshole, and can't believe he's actually an athletic director, to be honest. So I don't know how he got his way into that.
It's also interesting that he was the athletic director that basically canceled the football program at his prior stop, University of Nebraska, Omaha. Who
Lance Leipold was at one point with the head coach of Nebraska, Omaha. Trev Alberts worked as the athletic director, and Lance Leipold was there as an assistant coach, offensive coordinator at Omaha, I believe.
Yeah.
So
and so did Steve Stannard and Connor Riley. That's how they're all kind of intertwined.
Connor Riley, next head coach of the Huskers.
Steve Stannard.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Yeah. Well, here's Cole. Here's what I just the whole message board aspect of this has really played to my sensibilities because I mean, look, I grew up with message board culture, so I very much still get swept into it. But like reading some of the Nebraska stuff and seeing some of that, I'm seeing people talking about. I don't know if this means anything to you guys. Maybe Cole, probably not Derek, but like they're talking about. Does Jim Rose still do something associated with one of the Nebraska sites? Like people were talking about Jim blanking Rose still having a voice. That is the most arrogant. So one of the greatest things on earth. Go to YouTube. Fatty for KSU had it posted up there. The 38-9 win in Lincoln in 2003 when K-State just kicked Nebraska's ass up and down the field. Jamal Lord, L. Roberson, that whole thing. Jim Rose doing the radio broadcast of that sounded so butthurt the entire way late in the game on those calls as K-State scoring and then Bo Pelini was complaining after the game about running up the score when he was the DC. Just all that was chef's kiss. And like Jim Rose, I remember hearing like a little 2-3 minute blurb that he had put together, a couple years ago about Nebraska, just the arrogance that comes off that guy and still believing that it's 1995. Like, I mean, I was just blown away. Like Nebraska lives in this ecosystem of just the echo chamber ecosystem that they live in with their self-importance is just unbelievable. Now, again, I'm going off of what people were giving me as a synopsis of Jim Rose apparently doing something, but all that blows my mind. Blows my mind.
That's a name that I've not heard in a long time. So I did not know he was still doing Nebraska stuff, but it's interesting. You know, circling back to the Kleiman, Nebraska stuff, I know we touched on it on the pod that we released earlier this week, and then the rumors seemed to heat up a little bit more over the 24 hours after that. I repeat the same stance that I had then, is that I just don't see him taking the Nebraska job. Gene Taylor, reason number one. Reason number two, and we talked about this actually in October when this came up as a topic, and Kleiman was mentioned. Chris Kleiman does not like doing all the sort of rah-rah fan engagement type stuff and activity that comes with a job like Nebraska. He has the capability at Kansas State to say no more on occasion to doing some of those things. He wants to be laser focused on his football team. He wants to win games. He's not about going out and doing a bunch of speaking events and having to go out and engage with the fans. Not that he won't do it. He does do it. But at Nebraska, there would be an expectation that he would have to do it frequently more than he does at Kansas State. It's a different level of stress and a different level of distraction that occurs there that he is not really about as a football coach. So I just don't see him having interest in that. Do I think he's going to get a raise from Kansas State? I do. There's a difference between making a ton of money. Well, he's going to make a ton of money either place, but making, a couple $1 million more and not being as happy, or still being filthy rich and being happy. And at Kansas State, he can be very rich and be much happier. And I think he will stay here. He's a loyal guy. He doesn't like distractions either, as I said. And that's what the timing of this all seems bizarre to me, that the rumors heated up on the Nebraska side and all sorts of hearsay. He is in the hunt for a Big 12 championship. It's in-state rivalry week. These next 2 weeks are the time where he's absolutely going to be laser focused on what's occurring within his football team. And I know agents have back channel conversations, but I just don't see him wanting any distractions going on right now. And so I don't even think those conversations are happening at the agent level in all likelihood.
I don't understand the agent world well enough to know about it, but yeah, I mean, we know another thing Derek has pointed out multiple times, like how Chris Kleiman, and maybe Cole, you too, somebody has pointed it out multiple times, like how he handled things at North Dakota State, where he was like openly talking to the players about the fact that he was being courted by K-State and thinking about that. And he had the team meeting where he got the standing ovation. Like he handled it in such an open, transparent way. And I guess you can say that's at a lower level, but that was like during an FCS playoff run for Kleiman, because I remember going and covering the FCS championship game that year after he had already been hired. So like we've seen how he has handled things like this before. And I just don't, I mean, again, it's Nebraska living in their own world. It is so stupid.
And I don't think it's really contingent on the level. Like, I mean, we've seen it time and time again how it's conducted. I don't think we've ever seen one conducted like that, like the way Kleiman did when he exited North Dakota State. So I think that bears itself out more based on the man that he is, to be quite honest.
And don't forget, it was important to him to coach that national championship game at North Dakota State to allow him to stay on that job. And Nebraska probably, I mean, that's just not going to work if he takes a Nebraska job, right? He's not going to coach Kansas State potentially in the Sugar Bowl. There's going to be an expectation that he moves on. Chris Kleiman is an incredibly loyal guy. And maybe this is being naive, but I have a hard time seeing him say to Deuce Vaughn and Eli Huggins and Daniel Green and all these 5th and 6th year guys that have been with him and the 4 years in the program that, hey, I'm going to abandon you guys heading into the Sugar Bowl. I just don't see it. I really think he'll stay at Kansas State. He'll get a new contract extension and move on. It sucks that we're talking about this because the topic should be about Kansas State potentially clinching a Big 12 title berth this weekend. And look, Nebraska and Kansas fans are getting exactly what they want. They're getting distractions here. Well,
I really don't think Kansas State's that distracted.
Yeah, I was getting well, and also you said that to me, Cole, and I was like, Leipold's doing the same. Leipold's got the same thing, except he's got Bruce Feldman talking on a podcast about Leipold being the most likely name there. You know, I mean, there's more traction legitimately for Leipold. And again, I don't know that anybody has real concrete info on the Nebraska search. I got to give that to Trev Alberts. It seems like he's done a great job keeping it zipped up. Yeah. But there's plenty of speculation on the other side because, you know, I've been hearing this from Kansas folks that I talk to. So they're like, they seem convinced this year, you know, is it Shelley Leipold? She threw out a tweet that was a couple of days ago that was like, oh, we'll see you in the booth next year. And like, oh, this is it. KU upped their offer. They had a contract sitting out there forever. He didn't sign it yet. They upped their offer. It's done. Well, then why isn't it signed and announced? You guys rushed a Kevin Harlan video when you had nothing in terms of funding for this stadium. So you're not going to why would you not throw the contract extension thing out there this week to get rid of the distraction? So anyway, point being, Cole, I think it exists for them too.
I don't think it's necessarily a distraction in the locker room. I actually just mean more along the lines that we're having to spend so much time talking about it, which it is relevant to talk about, you know, and that it's becoming such a thing that we're sitting here on the, 4 days away from going to the Big 12 championship potentially and discussing this. It's a bummer, but I'm not worried about it. And I know the team's focused. They're locked in.
Well, let me throw one last little thing out here at you, and that is how high does K-State go monetarily for Kleiman, you think? Let's assume they make the Big 12 championship game. What's that contract going to be if right now he's sitting at like just over $4 million a year?
Well, I could throw out. I mean, look, they raised $10 million to buy Brad Underwood out, all right, from donors. So we confidently said that months ago. I think if he gets to the Big 12 championship, there's going to be plenty of donors and others willing to step forward and make this work out wherever the money comes from. So I think if they had to, I think they could stretch it to close to $6 million.
It's probably what it's going to have to be, I would think, at least in that ballpark. But I think the bigger commitment will probably have to come from assistants. Assistants. Yeah.
I was just about, my follow-up was going to be after someone said, I was like, well, they get to 6. I mean, that is kind of the number that I had in mind, 6. So we'll see. Okay, Cole, you got your wish, buddy. I'm moving on from speculation about coaching jobs. We're going to talk about good old X's and O's and another thing I'm very uneasy about, and that is injuries mounting in the K-State secondary because we know Kobe Savage is out for the year. And, quarter one without Kobe Savage was sure interesting in Morgantown defensively and what turned out to be a very high-scoring game. Now, Sincere Mason, who had a pick 6 in said first quarter, is also out for the year, which is a huge bummer. A guy that is giving K-State a lot as another FCS transfer that took a step up this year. He put out a pretty heartfelt, you could tell he was really hurting, tweet last night. So sincerely wish the best for him for sure. But now safety is very, very thin. So concern level DY with the safety position after we got confirmation today from Chris Kleiman that Sincere Mason's on the shelf for the rest of the year.
Yeah, mildly concerned at this point. TJ Smith, I understand the consternation from some, but it's at least a guy that's played a lot of college football. And VJ Payne had a rough first half, but at least settled into the second half and actually played pretty well. If you go back on the rewatch, his first half was problematic, especially where he was choosing to be aggressive. And I think you like that. But then, that was all concentrated on doing the wrong thing at times just because he's still learning and he needs more seasoning and more experience. And you hope that, the amount of snaps that he played in 4 quarters against West Virginia will do him pretty well when he plays Kansas this weekend. So, because I think you're probably going to see a lot more VJ Payne and Kendra Steiger had 4 snaps. He's a guy they're trying to redshirt. He's played 3 games, so we'll see what happened. He might be the guy that kind of gets strapped into playing 5 games and is a little over the redshirt mark, and that's also obviously, can sometimes be a topic. So, no, I would say mildly concerned. And I'm kind of a Chris Kleiman on this, and, he didn't come out and say this, so it's more reading in between the lines. But almost really the issue doesn't necessarily just come in replacing Kobe Savage or just replacing Sincere Mason. It's now that you lost 2 of those guys that can kind of spell others, because someone else has to start for Kobe Savage, and Sincere Mason's the backup, right? So it's the amount of pressure you're now putting on someone like Josh Hayes and someone like Drake Cheatham, and the amount of snaps that you're going to have to ask of them. They're going to have to take 95 to 98% of the snaps on now, because there's not proven depth behind them. So it's the amount of pressure and the amount of snaps that you got to put on them. And then when that happens, how much energy level, or how much of them are you getting in the fourth quarter? Because that's probably been one of the key things for Joe Kleiman's team, and why they're so good on that side of the ball for a lot of the time that he's been the defensive coordinator, because they got fresh legs still, comparatively speaking, in the second half. When you're playing a lot of snaps, sometimes that's not the case. Julius Brents played every single snap against West Virginia. Drake Cheatham almost did. Josh Hayes almost did. And we're talking about Josh Hayes breaking down and man coverage more than he has all season in that game. And you have to wonder, what does that come down to? Are we not going to get the same Josh Hayes we've been getting all year, because he won't have those fresh legs, because he does have to play much more snaps?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a great time of year to go into this situation, right? I know a lot of people are thinking, okay, well, it's going to be very problematic against TCU if they make it to the Big 12 championship, but it's going to be problematic against Kansas.
Listen, don't put that evil on me, Cole. I've been worried about it for Kansas before the injuries even happened.
Well, we know your paranoia with Kansas. I will say that this is, Kansas does a lot of misdirection. They mess with your eyes with the things that they do offensively with their scheme, and that is a tricky spot to put inexperienced safeties out there that could get in at a bad spot and get put in the wrong spot on the field, and Kansas hits you for a big play. And, I was taken aback a little bit. I know KU's had good offense all year, but I was taken aback a little bit with some of their numbers offensively, and we'll talk about them later in the show. But they are definitely, you could argue they're the best offense in the Big 12.
Yeah, and they have lost 5 of their last 6 games, to be fair, and I don't know that Jalen Daniels is the same Jalen Daniels that we saw at the beginning of the year. He kind of looked rough last week against Texas, and maybe that's just a blip on the radar. We'll find out soon enough, right? I did want to bring up, and I'm sure you guys will talk to it because I got to exit out of here in a little bit, obviously, but the playoff polls just were released, and they still love Kansas State. Wildcats are number 12 in the playoff.
That's what I thought. All right. That's what I thought. I thought they'd move up to 12. So that's great.
Love that. Okay.
So you beat KU, and
if you beat Kansas, are you a top 10 team entering the Big 12 championship game? And by the way, that's really good for TCU if it turns out that way.
Yeah, definitely it is. Because when Oklahoma lost to Kansas State in the Big 12 title in 2003, K-State was 15th, John? And OU still got in the national title.
Teens. So, I feel like it was maybe even lower than that, maybe like lower teens. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's great. And I'd have to look at the schedule to see who could lose in front of K-State this week. We know they're going to jump Michigan or Ohio State. One of them is going to lose, but maybe there's someone else that drops a game and they move up again another spot or two. So
yeah, I don't know. I'd have to go look at it. DY, do you need to bounce, or you want to answer or talk to headline number 3?
Well, why doesn't he just give us his lock of the week and score predict? Let's get his prediction too.
That's fair.
I can do third headline, and then we'll do lock of the week and prediction. I'll do the third one.
Okay. All right. We're recording this up against the basketball game, by the way, folks, if you are wondering about that. All right. Headline number 3 really to me is just that, like, as we're talking about here, we're speaking to it already. Everything's on the line in this, man. I mean, you're talking about the potential difference. I mean, we'll see what happens Friday with Texas and Baylor. My hopes are not very high that Baylor wins that game, but you're talking about the difference potentially between Big 12 championship game, very good likelihood that it would be the Sugar Bowl, no matter what, top 10 ranking, beating your rival, all that versus losing to Kansas, having to hear about that for a year, providing them with a bunch of momentum for Leipold, missing out on a Big 12 championship game, missing out on a Sugar Bowl. Like that, it's just, there's a lot riding on this game, man. There's a lot riding on this game. Could potentially be. I saw some talk about this. I saw Deuce's quote about this. Maybe the last home game for Deuce Vaughn, right? Like losing the last home game for Deuce Vaughn, Felix Anudike, Uzama, some of these guys that have been around. It would just be. It makes me want to vomit thinking about it right now. If you were to lose the game, right? But on the other hand, if you win the game, it would be absolutely awesome, and it would be a sweet celebration. So the stakes are as high for this as any game K-State's played in a long, long time.
It's a heck of a curtain call. You got a lot of different things kind of colliding all at once. You got the rivalry. You got the stakes of a possible Big 12 championship berth on the line, and it's senior day. Like all those things you talked about all colliding at one point. I don't know that we've had this kind of crescendo at Kansas State in quite a while, at least since I've covered the team in 2017. We talked about how crazy that atmosphere was going to be for the Missouri game, and then the rain really did rain on the parade of that one, and what that atmosphere could have been like. But we got really good atmospheres for the Texas game. Unfortunately, happened in a loss, and I think there was another one, Oklahoma State. That was another one. So they've had some really good home atmospheres this year, but there probably won't be anything like this one with it being a night game. Texas could have rivaled that if Kansas State was a bit more competitive, but they went down by such a large margin early that I think it took some of the luster off. There was points in the second half where that baby got real loud, but I don't know that it'll compare to this weekend with it a night game, the Sunflower Showdown. One of the better KU teams in quite a while, Big 12 berth on the line, got some really good football players that could be exiting Kansas State. Could be the last time we get to watch them at Bill Snyder Family Stadium.
Yeah, it's obviously the highest stake game in Manhattan since the 2012 Texas game to go to the Big 12 champ or to clinch the Big 12 title.
So real quick, Cole, I just want to jump in because I knew that was going to get brought up. I will say even this feels like different than that because we knew Big 12 championship was on the line, but that was coming off the heels of Baylor where it was like everyone had national title hopes that had just been zapped, and it was it was kind of deflating. It was a different sort of environment that I think
this one's been more of a build, more of a climb.
Yeah.
You felt like maybe you were going a little sinking a little bit. So I could definitely see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I could make that case certainly. Especially the circumstance, it's such a weird situation. They had the bye week after the Baylor game, so then you had to sit on that for 2 weeks, and
the only thing I would say is potential what if Baylor upsets Texas on Black Friday?
Yeah, that might change it a little bit.
Yeah, I think the energy will still be. It's Kansas's best team, and over a decade, 15 years, or whatever it is. So I think Kansas State fans, it'll be an electric atmosphere, especially if the rain stays away. Right now, it's changed again, and it looks like it's going to be a nice day, a nice evening. We'll keep monitoring that forecast, but I think it's going to be an electric atmosphere. They've sold a lot of standing room tickets. I think most of the students will probably be back as well, just because it's Kansas and they're opening the student housing early to accommodate them. So I think it's going to be great. I can't wait for it. There is a lot on the line. So it's going to be a nerve-wracking day, nerve-wracking evening, but it will make it all the sweeter if you pull it out and are heading to Arlington in a week. So,
yeah, go ahead.
No, that's really all I had. DY.
I was going to say, and this is probably the sentimental side of me showing with getting, aging in my early age or my old age here at 33 years old. But I also will get, I think, some, appreciation or at least a little bit of excitement and feel good inside seeing guys like Adrian Martinez called out for senior day, a guy that's been through it in his college career. He obviously got that in Nebraska, but he's been through it again here at Kansas State and went through a lot of adversity. Or a guy like Daniel Green, who, man, it was a struggle for him to even get to Manhattan, and just, probably the joy that'll come across them when they receive the ovations that they will receive. Those are two that come to mind, but even someone like Malik Knowles and Phillip Brooks, there's a lot of guys that'll be announced before the game that have put a lot on the line for Kansas State in the past few years. They have several multi-year starters that are going to be recognized pregame that the crowd will erupt for just because it's a night game as well.
Well, DY, I wrote down a lot of those guys that are seniors because I wanted to recognize that because it's pretty special, some of these guys they have on this football team in the days of the transfer portal that could have left. I think of a guy like Eli Huggins, 6 year playing at Kansas State. He's went through multiple coaching changes, never left, came back for that 6th year. You mentioned Daniel Green, year 5, Malik Knowles, Phillip Brooks, Katori Leviston, Christian Duffy, Hayden Gillum, Nick Allen, all in their 5th year. Echo Boydo, 5th-year player. Jalen Pickle, Sammy Wheeler. You think of a guy like Seth Porter, a heck of a walk-on, a great leader in that locker room, has been tremendous on K-State special teams. 5th-year guy. Cooper Beebe, who knows? You know, I think he'll probably be back, but that's just me speculating. But he's in a 4th-year guy. Felix, Deuce. I mean, you go down the list. Ty Zentner, year 4. He's been a really good player for K-State on special teams. I hope I didn't forget anybody, but you know, Julius Brents. Julius Brents, a heck of a corner. Been here 2 years, obviously. But yeah, this is a pretty special senior class that has elevated the program and gotten them on this stage. And they stuck around and didn't leave. So yeah, I really want it for those guys too, for this moment. Because when we met with them, DY in Arlington at Big 12 Media Day, we kept asking them, you know, you guys going to get back here on December 3rd? And it's right there now to get back into AT&T Stadium, Cowboys Stadium, to play there for a Big 12 title.
Yeah, man, you start going through that list and it's just like, geez, start thinking about next year, like, oh boy. But at the same time, yeah, reflecting a lot on those guys and their careers and everything they've given to K-State, no doubt. Okay, DY, your lock of the week. Things have not been going well for any of us. DY 6-5, I'm 5-6, Cole is 4-7. So we're trending downward. What do you got this week?
Yeah, I got rocked by UCLA last week. You lost to the Trojans. Real money, kind of back in UCLA again, but I'm not picking them for my lock of the week. I'm fading Vanderbilt again, which maybe is not a good thing because they've won 2 SEC games in a row. That's off to the Commodores, knocking off Kentucky and Florida. Pretty impressive. But Tennessee, they're licking their wounds a little bit, and Vanderbilt's probably there for a shellacking. So I got Tennessee -14. You
got Mackenzie Milton crushing Vandy. That's what you got?
That's Joe Milton, John.
Joe
Joe Milton. I'm sorry. Okay, my bad.
God.
Yeah, Joe Milton can do some things. I'd rather have Hendon Hooker, obviously, but I think Tennessee, I think they're a lot better than Vanderbilt still. Yeah. I think the line has been manipulated a little bit too much by the injury, and Vanderbilt finally winning 2 SEC games in a row.
Okay, and what do people really want to know? Your prediction for KU State? I'm seeing the line at 12 right now. Is that what you guys have? -12?
Yeah, I don't see Kansas State covering, but I do see Kansas State winning. So we'll put that to bed. I think it'll be 38-30. I think a little bit of a shootout.
Okay, I was about to be like, Cole, you're next, but we'll save that. We'll save that. Derek's off to watch some flow hoops. Boy, what a game we had yesterday. K-State's defense holding Rhode Island to -19 points in the first half.
And this will not help our viewers who are going to listen to this after the game is over, obviously, but it'll help you guys. By the way, a lot of points in this one. It's 15-15, 5 minutes in.
Okay. Well, I put my phone in airplane mode, so I didn't know what was going on. I did not expect it to be that high scoring because I heard Nevada was number 3 in the country in expected field goal percentage defensively.
And we're a good defensive team.
Yeah.
K-State's hanging their hat on defense. All right, interesting. Okay. DY, get out of here. We'll take a break. Come back. Cole and I will finish up with a little bit disjointed here, but we will finish up the pod with a little Kansas preview and some quick hitters, and then get to our predictions. All that coming up next. All right, back just me and Cole now to take you the rest of the way here on 3 Cole. Time for a breakdown in depth of Kansas' offense and defense. Don't you think I let it slide past that you said, I was actually surprised. I was looking at Kansas's numbers, and it turns out that, they're actually pretty good offensively. You could might be able to say they're the best offense of the Big 12. Let me just tell you guys a little story here. I've been screaming it at Cole since like week 2. Who did KU have? Tennessee Tech, first week of the season. I was like, dude, that didn't look like Kansas. Like that looked like a better team. No. They beat Houston, and I'm like, look, man. They're 3-0. They're smoking people. The offense looks great. Oh, Houston, terrible. By the way, Houston's still a shot at the AAC championship at this point in time here late in the season. And then it gets into conference play, and I was like, well, soft the back half of this guy. Okay, all right. At every turn, I've been trying to show Kansas not more than an adequate amount of respect for what they've been doing, because that offense scares me. It looks very, very good. I think the scheme is incredible. Now, I have also been of the opinion that it's much more about the scheme than it ever was about Jalen Daniels. I think as evidenced by the fact that Jason Bean came in and was still able to, yes, with some mistakes, certainly still mistake prone, but able to move that offense pretty well. Like, I don't know. Devin Neal's great. Like, they've got weapons and they've got scheme. So the floor is yours, Cole, but please enlighten us on how good this Kansas offense is after I've been trying to say it the entire year.
Well, you were correct. They're pretty good. I guess I thought their numbers would have slid some on the back half just because there were some games where they were down by 3 or 4 scores that it looked like they were going to get blown out, and then they came back. Oklahoma, Baylor are 2 games that I recall, and so their numbers are probably a little bit better just because the defenses might have went into a little bit more of a prevent type mode. But I mean, they've been good offensively for the most part. I just was surprised at how balanced they've been, in terms of running, how they stack up and running the football and throwing the football. Obviously it starts with, the Jalen Daniels stuff and the talk we heard about him, in the first few weeks of the season. And then Jason Bean came in and he was pretty effective. I will say that, they've gotten away with some mistake throws that should have been picked off in multiple games that I watched, that they were advantageously lucky and fortunate that didn't occur. But I can't deny that it's a pretty darn good offense. Their scheme is solid. When I've watched KU games, I've seen some things they do schematically that I really like and was jealous at one point when K-State's offense was scuffling a little bit. And so, you look at the running game, obviously Devin Neal, he's at over 6 yards per carry, over 1,000 yards. Yeah, he's actually averaging 1.5 yards more a carry than Deuce Vaughn is. We know how great Deuce is. So they're good running the football. Let me just pull up the numbers. They're 4th in the country in pass efficiency offense. See, I mean, I think if you saw that, John, wouldn't you be taken aback if you thought Kansas was 4th in the country in pass efficiency? I mean, even with Jason Bean having played so many games.
No, because every time I look up, Jason Bean's throwing a 50-yard touchdown. Like, he's just throwing a dot to the back of the end zone. He also, every once in a while I'll look up and he's throwing a stupid interception, but the guy makes plays. And Jason Bean was terrible. Horrendous the previous years that I had watched the man play football. So,
yeah. Well, okay. So 4th in pass efficiency offense, K-State's pass efficiency defense heading into last week, which is actually best in the Big 12. They slid a little bit after the West Virginia game, but they're 29th in the country and 2nd best in the Big 12, I believe now. KU's also 10th in sack percentage allowed nationally and tops in the Big 12, only giving up sacks on 2.9% of their dropback attempts. Now, part of that is Jason Bean and Daniels are pretty mobile guys, so they're able to elude some pressure as well. KU 9.9 yards per pass, which is number 8 nationally and tops in the Big 12. 14.2 yards per completion, which is 9th nationally and tops in the Big 12. Their top 2 receivers, Arnold and Skinner, they're both sophomores. They're bigger guys, 6'3" and 6'5", respectively. They each average over 17 yards a catch. Luke Grimm's that veteran receiver out of Raymore, Missouri, that has 80 catches in his career, over 1,000 yards. And then a guy you got to look out for is Mason Fairchild. He's their 6'5" senior tight end, or not senior, but tight end. Every time I watch a KU game, I feel like I'm seeing them hit Mason Fairchild over the middle for a seam route. He's got over 300 yards receiving this year. Devin Neal, what's interesting about Neal, he's over 1,000 yards, and obviously he had a good freshman year too. He's on track to have a heck of a career. But he went 7 games where he didn't hit 100 yards, 7 straight games where he was held under 100 yards. He rushed for 108 in the season opener on just 4 carries, and then didn't go over 100 again until the Oklahoma State game, I want to say. So he then had 400 yards between the Oklahoma State and Texas Tech game. So he exploded in recent weeks in the running game. They run the ball on 56% of their snaps, 6.5 yards per rush over the last 3 games. That's number 5 in the country during that time span. On the season, they're averaging 5.4 yards per carry, which is number 11 in the country. And K-State is 68th in the country in yards per rush allowed at 4.4. K-State has struggled a little bit defending the run over the last few weeks. You look at what Texas did, and West Virginia found some holes with their running backs as well. So what I will say, John, if you want me to make you feel a little bit better, and again, Kansas, they're 20th in the country in points per drive offensively as well. When they played Iowa State and Texas, which are the 2 other top defenses in the Big 12, against those 2 teams in non-garbage time, KU had 17 drives and scored 14 points. So 14 points on 17 drives against Iowa State and Texas, which are the only two comparable defenses to Kansas State. If you look at the FEI ratings, or Bill Connolly's strength defense ratings, K-State is 11th in the country defensively overall in those metrics. And then Iowa State is 7th and Texas was 17th. So comparable defenses, KU struggled to move the football. So Kansas State has a good defense. Now, Kansas State is down 2 safeties, so that is impactful. We don't know what that'll do to the secondary, but K-State has really good corners, good linebackers, a good D-line. I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, okay. Well, I appreciate that at the end. That is fair, and I would also say they're getting the sort of steroid version of the K-State defense, which is just playing at home. I know that trend has been bucked a little bit, but really it's just the Baylor game being a major outlier there where they held Baylor without a touchdown. But before that, it was, they'd forced, what was it, through 8 or 9 weeks of the season, all the turnovers forced were at home versus none on the road. So they've generally been much better at home. So I would hope that plays a pretty large role here too.
Yep.
Well, the Kansas defense is terrible. I do know that. So this part, I'll just roll out the red carpet for you. You can go right ahead with this part.
All right, 3.19 points per drive allowed, 127th out of 131 FBS teams for that KU defense. If I look at the Bill Connolly rankings, 102nd in his SP Plus rankings. FEI ratings are very similar as well when you look at the KU defense. 6 yards per play, number 112 in the country, 97th in pass efficiency defense, 110th in sack percentage, 7.9 yards per pass allowed, 104th nationally. And then I'm trying to see here the yards per carry allowed, 4.7 per rush, which is 101st nationally. Over the last 3, though, they've given up 5.7 yards per carry. And if you look at the Texas Tech game and Texas game combined, they gave up about 700 yards on the ground in those 2 games and over 6-7 yards a carry. So they've been gashed in all facets defensively. They also don't get after the quarterback. Their sack rate is tremendously low as well. Over the last 3 games, allowing actually, this isn't even our last 3 games. This is on the season. 200 rushing yards per game, which is 118th in the country and last in the Big 12. And over their last 3 games, they're giving up 267 per game on the ground. So, which is the worst among all Power 5 schools during that time range. So, yeah, it's a defense that has been lacking both against the pass and against the run. K-State should be able to do really whatever it wants against that KU defense. So whether it's run the ball with Deuce Vaughn, they should be able to have a balanced attack, and it'll be hard for KU to stop it.
Yeah, that's going to be the interesting part to me. Like, which way do you think K-State is leaning on this? Is it going to be Deuce bust back out, especially? I mean, we are coming off of a Deuce game where he looked a little banged up, maybe a half step slow, maybe the weather and field conditions played into that too. But I don't know. 2 weeks ago he was fabulous. What do you foresee there?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I go about that too. I wonder, late game season, cold. Do they keep the ball on the ground more? Do they air it out? It doesn't look like it's going to be windy, so they should have the conditions, assuming it's not going to rain, to where they can do whatever they really want and have all things at their disposal. I will say that they've been more aggressive with Will Howard when he's been the quarterback. And so they've thrown the ball in situations that I would have never expected a K-State offense to throw the ball. Against West Virginia, there were spots where I'm begging them to just run it at that point. Like they were up 17.
4th and 1.
Yeah. I mean, 4th and 1, and they're running a one-man pop pass to Ben Sinnott. I mean, up 17 in the 4th quarter. They're throwing the ball sometimes on 1st down, up 17. I mean, they've been aggressive, man, and it's fun to watch. It's also a little scary sometimes when you got a guy like Deuce Vaughn and you're not giving him the football quite as much, but they still give Deuce the ball plenty. And I think it's going to be pretty balanced, honestly, John. I think ever since Will Howard's been the quarterback, they've been close to 50-50 in terms of percent of runs versus percent of passes. So I expect it to be a pretty balanced attack. I don't see any reason they're going to let off, Will Howard passing the football to his weapons and Sinnott, Knowles, Brooks, Warner, etc.
Well, you nailed exactly why the Will Howard offense has been such a revelation, because they are so much more aggressive and making plays. I mean, even like the 3rd and goal on the run, Will Howard throwing the dart to Ben Sinnott in the back of the end zone, plays like that. And by the way, K-State will not have Adrian Martinez. Chris Kleiman did say at the press conference that he is still going to be out, though he is getting better. So there is your update on the backup quarterback situation. Time for some quick hitters. And speaking of quarterbacks, Cole, I already you've had a test run at this question because I floated it in the group chat last night. My dad actually asked me this question, and I thought, hey, that's a great question. I think we all know who the first team All Big 12 quarterback is going to be. Guy who should be in New York. I don't know if he will be, but that's Max Duggan. Who is the second team All Big 12 quarterback this year?
It's funny that your dad actually floated this because I had it pop in my head, but I was going to save the question for you until after the KU game heading into the Big 12 championship. And I was going to ask you guys what you thought, because I thought Will Howard, he could be in the argument, in the discussion, if he has a heck of a game against KU. I mean, his stat line, 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, over 1,000 yards, completing 9.1 yards per pass where he sits. I mean, I know it's still a small sample size, but you could make an argument for what he's meant to a team that could get to the Big 12 championship. I still think it would be a guy that had a bigger quality of snaps or quantity of snaps, though. So I think it would probably either be Dylan Gabriel or even Spencer Sanders, which he hasn't played well the last few weeks for sure. But I could see them give it to Spencer Sanders. We'll see what he does against West Virginia to close out the season this weekend. But yeah, I don't think it'll be Will Howard, but it's an interesting point to discuss. Now, Will Howard goes out and throws 500 yards against KU. I mean,
that's the thing. I know you're right. I would not bet on it being Will Howard, but I think he has, if they beat Kansas and he has a big game, he will have as strong an argument as almost anybody. That would be basically 5 Big 12 games played. So a little over half the Big 12 season. If you're talking about, I always tend to think of like the all Big 12 awards being about just conference games, right? And if you're operating under that assumption, then, you've at least got over half of the games, but it's like, if you had another game or two in there, I think it would make a very big difference.
I would say this, John. If you could mold the body of work that Adrian Martinez and Will Howard did together, the K-State quarterback room has been all Big 12 worthy.
For sure.
Because you look at over 600 rushing yards by Adrian, 1,200 yards passing, just 1 interception, 6 touchdowns. I mean, you look at the K-State quarterback numbers of Will Howard and Adrian Martinez, you're talking about 17 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and over 2,400 yards passing. I mean, that's a second team, at least all Big 12 type numbers, but unfortunately it's been split between the two of them.
Yeah. I mean, for sure, second team all Big 12 number. Part of the reason there, I think you hesitate, is like Max Duggan's just been so good. But some years, maybe even first team all Big 12 kind of good. Okay. What was the more fun blowout of Kansas, Cole? Was it, I picked out what I think are the 3 best that we've had here in the post Bill Snyder era: 1995, 2002, or 2010. 59-7 in 2010, Thursday night. That was a total shock. I think we expected K-State to be better than Kansas at that point in time, but I didn't think 59-7 better in the first Turner Gill v. Bill Snyder matchup. 41-7 in 1995. Both teams were in the top 15. That was a huge game. K-State just waxed Kansas, and then 64-0 by midway through the third quarter in 2002. That game that we all remember against Mark Mangino in his first year. Yeah,
I would include 95 and 2002, and then
Mangino's second year, I believe. Second year.
Yeah, I would include those two, and then I could certainly make a case for the Thursday night game. I was in the press box of that one, and I remember there was an energy around Kansas. I think it was Turner Gill. Was that Turner Gill's first year?
I believe it was, because 2009, that was still Mangino. That was that team that tanked at the end of the year.
And then they fired him, and then Turner Gill took over, and there was an energy in the stadium, and then K-State just took it to him. And I think I even recall Colin Klein getting a snap and running for 60 yards at the end, and just blew him out. I think you could make a case for 2019, Les Miles' first season, just because there was kind of a, I might include that. I was there for that one too. Just because there was kind of a cockiness among KU fans and excitement about Les Miles. And then, I remember not sleeping that well that night, being a little bit nervous for that game. And then K-State just left no doubt from the onset and completely whooped them. So I could rank that up there as well.
We didn't give me a choice.
Well, you say I have to pick the number 1 or top 3.
Yeah, no. Which is your favorite?
I'd say the 64-0 game.
Really?
Yeah.
here's the thing. If I were going, like, my head would say 1995. The problem is I was 6 years old, and I was definitely, I was like Brody at that time. I mean, I was into it, and I was watching it. I'm sure I was there at the game. We went to virtually every home game at that point in time and had season tickets. But it's more like I have watched the highlight tape 150 times and have memorized all the Mitch Holthus calls from that game. Forget the first down, go for the business. All that stuff that I love from that game. But for me experiencing it, I was in the student section in Lawrence in 2010. So like that was, and this is, that was into my college experience. My freshman year of college, I went through 2007 where I brought, a buddy of mine from KU into the student section, that whole fiasco. We know how that game went, and a terrible memory. So it was like into my college career, I get to go out my Twitter persona, just that personified in a person, but plot me in the middle of the KU student section. That's kind of how I was acting at that point in time. So it was very fun. By the end of the game, I got up to the front row of the student section because obviously everybody cleared out. The booth was not packed by that point in the game. And somebody had left a sign that said, "Fear the Web." And it had a bunch of glitter spider web because Kansas's quarterback was Jordan Webb. So I was sitting there like standing on the front row of the student section with this "Fear the Web" sign, like trying to shake it for the cameras and stuff. So personally for me, I just think I had the most fun with that one. So I'd give a slight edge to that.
Yeah. I could say that. Look, 95, and I actually typically remember most of the games that I watched or was at as a kid growing up, and I would have been 9 years old for that game. And it's always kind of eluded me, and I don't know why. I don't know. I've rewatched it, but I don't. It's one of the few K-State games of my childhood that I don't remember all that well. I don't know why. If I wasn't watching it for whatever reason, I can't believe I wasn't. But I wasn't there. And so that's always my brother actually texted me this week and asked me if I could find the YouTube of the 95 KU game. It's one he remembers fondly because he wants to rewatch the game, and I couldn't find it for him. So I
don't know that the whole game is out there. I think I have a VHS tape of the entire game somewhere, but you can find the 1995 season highlight tape is out there, so you can watch like a 3 or 4 minute synopsis of it. If anybody has it or finds it, let me know at Kurtz on Twitter. What were you doing, Cole, on November 1st, 2008, the last time K-State beat Kansas beat K-State, rather?
I was at the game. I was I was in the K-State. Well, let's see. That 2008, that was in Lawrence, right?
Yeah, so that was Josh Freeman trying to stick the ball over the goal line and getting it punched out. It was like 56-21 or something. I mean, it was bad.
Yeah, I covered that game. And in the press box in the Collegian. I would have been a senior at Kansas State. Covered that game. K-State correspondent for the Capital Journal too, as well, I believe. And so, yeah, I was in the press box for that. I just remember I dragged my brother and sister-in-law to the game, and they had to sit in the stands. They rode with me and use my parking pass, and they sat in the stands, and I endured it in the press box. So yeah, I went to all 3 of those games. John, 06, I was sitting right next to Josh Freeman's family, actually, in the stands in the K-State section for that game. So I had haunting memories of that bell ringing when John Cornish would score touchdown after touchdown.
Canada's finest, yeah. I was there in 06. I was there in 07. I was not there in 08. John was pretty checked out on Ron Prince football by about game 2 or 3. I think the Louisville game was probably what did it for me, which was obviously the non-con, that Thursday night game at Louisville where they ran steps or whatever when they came back. Yeah, I was pretty done. Hated the purple pants, just hated all of it. And I was actually at the time I was dating a girl that played soccer at Tulsa. So I was making a lot of trips to the campus in Tulsa, and that was a weekend I was like, look, I'm just coming to see you. I'm not messing around with the game. I didn't even really watch it. I was just out. I didn't.
Smart move.
Yeah.
I was checked out. I was checked out too. It was hard to cover those teams.
Yeah. What would you rather watch, Cole? Would you rather watch a Flow Hoops broadcast or any Tim Brando broadcast? Which one are you taking there?
I think I'd definitely rather watch a Flow Hoops broadcast, and that's coming from somebody that has still never watched a Flow Hoops broadcast. All right. I have not paid the $30. I didn't watch the Twitch stream last night. Shout out to Greg, I believe, who was streaming it. Maybe I shouldn't shout him out. I don't want him to get busted. But I'm going to try to watch that after we get done recording, watch the end of this Nevada game for K-State. But yeah, I have not watched a Flow Hoops broadcast, but that tells you how much I despise Tim Brando, because I'm sure the secondary market ticket prices probably took a soar when they saw Tim Brando was calling the game. You could raise the prices even more because no one wants to watch that.
Well, look, I mean, I work in marketing now these days. I would also choose a Flow Hoops broadcast. And when compared to a Tim Brando broadcast, I could actually sell you like, okay, does it look like Flow Hoops was produced by the Topeka West High School AV department? Yes, it does. No offense, Topeka West. I just pulled a random school. But yes, it does. However, I can make you the argument that, compared to Tim Brando, it's nice and quaint. It's a quaint little broadcast. They were glowingly positive about K-State yesterday. They love them, the Cats. So, Flow Hoops, frustrating as it may be at times, I will take that all day, every day. Now, if we threw Tim Brando on a Flow Hoops broadcast, now you've got quite possibly the worst broadcast that has ever been created.
Yeah. Well, I that's actually where I hope Tim Brando goes. I hope he ends up at Flow Football or something, and Flow Hoops, so we don't have to see him ever again. So I'll be interested. He hasn't called a K-State game since the TCU game and his stupid ass tweets and the things that he said. So I'll be curious how he actually treats that.
Yeah.
I don't think of him as the consummate professional. So I would not be surprised if he throws shade on the broadcast. He seems to take things a little personal.
I'm expecting it. I expect it at some point, man. And it is, you're right. It's the first time he's going to be on since his tweet calling Adrian Martinez a quitter because he was so butthurt about not getting a heads up on Adrian Martinez being hurt going into the TCU game that it was just don't even get us started. You guys know where we all stand. All right. We've got a lead pipe lock of the week to get you. We've got a prediction to get you. First, we need to take a break. We'll do that in just a minute. Okay, back here on Threemont, John Kurtz, Kleiman Beck. We already got Derek's lead pipe lock of the week. I already forgot what it was. What was it?
Tennessee.
That's right.
Minus 14 against Vanderbilt.
That's right. And you know what? I shouldn't mock it because Derek is 6-5. I'm 5-6. Cole is 4-7. I'll step up to the plate, even Cole, and give you mine. Remember our friends, the Tulane Green Wave. They are 2-point road dogs at Cincinnati in a huge game. Winner of that game would get to host the AAC championship game. It's turned into a crazy race thanks to UCF losing to Navy last week, who did not complete a pass in said victory. Shades of 2019, bringing back some bad memories there. But I'm taking Tulane. I know they had the loss mixed in there to UCF, but I think Tulane is pretty good. They got it all out of their system last week, my goodness, on SMU. And since he has just been like skating by. Last week, I think they won by like 20, but it was Temple, who's terrible. But they've really skated by with a lot of single possession wins over some mediocre to bad AAC teams. It feels to me like this is a spot where Tulane gets one over on them. So I'm wrong team favorite.
Yeah, it's definitely not the same Cincinnati team that we saw last year, obviously. And their quarterback, I believe, is rumored to be out, their starting quarterback. So I think the pick for Tulane is a good one, especially after how Tulane bounced back against UCF, and everything's on the line. Go to the AAC championship, and with UCF losing, Tulane could be the highest ranked Group of 5 team. And if they win the American Athletic Conference championship, they'd be going probably to a New Year's Six Bowl. So there's a lot on the line for them. You're talking about an 11-win regular season with a conference championship, not a 10-win regular season and then conference championship, you get to 11. So yeah, a lot there to play for. Obviously helps K-State's resume. I mean, you look at K-State's resume, I think part of the reason they're getting respect is because you look at their losses and it's TCU, which is number 4 in the poll, and Tulane, which they have a lot of respect for too. So they don't have any bad losses, Kansas State. My lock of the week should no longer be called a lock of the week. It's a complete joke. I've lost 5 in a row. It's not even competitive. In fact, here's my picks the last 2 weeks. I'll just throw myself under the bus. Took Miami plus 7.5 over Florida State, and they lost 45-3. Last week, I took Kansas plus 9, and they were down 55-0 at one point and lost 55-14. You combine it, and my 2 lead pipe locks of the week were a plus 16.5 combined and lost by 83 points combined. So it's bad. So I don't know why you would want it anything to do with my lead pie block of the week. I mean, the teams I pick are awful, and you know why I'm gonna head a direction here. I'm gonna take Kansas plus 12.
What?
Kansas State.
What?
You know where I'm going with this.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Okay, yes, I see what you're doing. I
don't need to explain it. I don't need to. You can't go into the explanation of it, or
okay,
it doesn't work.
Okay,
so
it's like a no hitter. Yeah, it's like a no hitter. You just
everything is on the line for the Jayhawks. I mean, and I say everything on the line in terms of wrecking Kansas State's season, their hopes and dreams, Big 12 title. Lance Leipold's a good coach. It's his last game, regular season game at the University of Kansas before he takes a Nebraska job. I kid. I'll take Kansas plus 12 in this game. So,
all right. I think that is the third straight week one of us has taken Kansas because I took them the week before at Tech. I thought they were going to win at Tech. So, back-to-back weeks they've burned us, and that's all I'll say. Okay. It's your prediction then. You've got Kansas covering. So I imagine you have it closer than a 12-point spread here for your prediction.
Well, I got to keep it in the number, right? So I'll take Kansas State 38, KU 27.
Are you kidding me? That is exactly what I have on my sheet. I had it at 41-30, and then I literally in my head I heard DY saying, because I think he said it on the last pod. He was like, in rivalry games it tends to get a little bit tight, so like lower scoring perhaps than you might think. And I was like, okay, I'll knock off a field goal. So I ended up at 38-27. Still felt like there were going to be a lot of points.
Well, there you go. Your lock of the week's Kansas too. 11 points. I mean, it's right there. Stay within 1 point.
I would take it. I would definitely take it. All right.
I think I would prefer it though if it was like 38-20 and KU tacked on a touchdown on the last like couple minutes. I don't have a lot of interest in a 2-score game throughout.
So what you're saying is you would prefer that it turns into the what was Les Miles? I keep wanting to say a Smacker Miles touchdown. It was not a Smacker Miles touchdown. It was I don't know, what was his kid's name? Ben.
I don't
remember that he snuck in. It was 38-3 and
you and me were on this. You and me were walking across the end zone down on the sideline. I think when that happened, he called a timeout to get his son a touchdown on a fullback dive. So
went full Drinkwitz on it,
Or was his son the quarterback? I can't.
No, his son I think was the quarterback. Mark, I don't know. He got his son a touchdown by calling a timeout there at the end of the game. So that's the route that you're going for there with that. Okay, a little backdoor cover. I don't know. Does Leipold have a kid on the team? I don't know if he does.
I don't think so. He's also not the type to probably.
Yes, no, that's the thing. Like Leipold's a respectful coach. Leipold's the guy that you can respect. He's right. No Les Miles. He's no Les Miles. All right. Again, come see us at the tailgate. 3 Mile Holiday Distillery KCSN tailgate, 4 to 6 on Saturday. West Side, spot number 778. Come hang out, have a drink with KCSN and Holiday Distillery. Maybe see some celebs. I don't know. We'll see what kind of pull we have there, but it'll be a really good time. Come say hey, introduce yourself, chop it up with us before the game, and see just how nervous and neurotic we all are just a couple hours ahead of that game coming up on Saturday. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving. I don't even think we mentioned the fact that Thanksgiving's coming up here, this entire pod. A happy Egg Bowl to you and yours on Thursday as well. I'm extremely fired up about that, as I always am, especially with Lane Kiffin's Twitter antics this week. Could not be any better. So appreciate the work behind the scenes from Jed Marshall, Tucker Franklin. Appreciate Cole Manbeck, Derek Young. This has been another 3 Mile. We'll talk to you soon, hopefully about a Big 12 championship game. See you there.